Today's bell ringer is about figurative language. There are a lot of types of figurative language. The one we're going to focus on today is called a metaphor. A metaphor is a comparison of two things. The way that it's being compared, you have thing one compared to thing two. And we know it's a metaphor when we say that thing one is actually thing two. So for example, in the quote that we're about to see on our bell ringer, it says, Rob imagined himself as a suitcase. Rob is thing one, suitcase is thing two. We are saying that Rob is actually a suitcase, so it is a metaphor. Here's our quote. Rob had a way of not thinking about things. He imagined himself as a suitcase that was too full. He made all his feelings go inside the suitcase. He stuffed them in tight and locked it shut. So because Rob is being compared to a suitcase, we might imagine him literally as a suitcase. So you'll see some of those suitcases that have faces on them and emotions and feelings. This would be a literal meaning of the quote. And then Rob sits on that suitcase, keeping all those feelings locked in. But figuratively, what it means is that each article of like clothing or shoes that are in that suitcase kind of represent a memory or a feeling. And he's going to keep them locked up and he is not going to communicate them with anybody. So figuratively, we're saying he's keeping his feelings to himself and he will not express them. So the literal meaning of this quote is that you might picture a suitcase with a face on it or expressions on it, because the literal meaning is Rob is an actual suitcase that is overflowing. The figurative meaning of this metaphor, so what it actually means, is that Rob is keeping his feelings to himself. So just to review, this quote has a specific type of figurative language called a metaphor. And when an author is using a metaphor, they are comparing two things. But instead of saying that thing one is like thing two, the author is saying thing one actually is thing two. So in our example, in our quote, Rob actually is a suitcase when we interpret this quote literally. But we know that figuratively, it just means that he's keeping all his feelings to himself.